Going. Hello, and welcome to the cabin. This is a track by track of our first album, Can't Stop, Won't Stop, from start to finish. We start with a banger, Everything I Ask For. Now, I think on the record, Everything I Ask For might be the most ambitious song that our band had created to that date. I think that the blend of groove and pop sensibility was something that our band had never sort of ventured in before, and I think that I said shit in the song, which is pretty cool. When I vividly remember, I don't really remember the actual construction of the song, but I vividly remember going back and forth about the track listing, and somebody had decided that it should be a good idea to put it first, and I thought it was a very ballsy move because, like I said, it being one of the more ambitious songs for our band, that was a great way to set the tone and the tempo for the rest of the record. Even though the rest of the record doesn't necessarily fit in that same vein, I felt like it was a good way to distance ourselves from the EPs that we had done before and the first songs. And it was a great way of just, I guess, introducing our band at the time. And since we've messed with groove and obviously have dabbled a bunch in pop, but that was one of the most harmonious kind of instances of the marrying of the two. We All Roll Along. Not only is it one of my favorite songs on Can't Stop, but it's my dad's all-time favorite song by our band. I remember him after one of our shows a couple years ago. We played it, and he had had a few beers, and he was like, "That was effing awesome! That was effing awesome!" He's like, "You played my song!" And my buddies were there, and he's like, "Why is it my favorite song?" It's because it's about all you guys and all of our friends. So that really resonates for me too, because that was what the song was about. It was about 8123, it was about the parking garage, and it was about just us growing up in high school and sort of that departure moment where you realize that you're leaving things behind, and it's not necessarily a bad thing because those things always sort of travel with you. The song is probably the fastest as far as tempo goes on Can't Stop, and it's a great song to play live because of that fact. And I feel like that song for us, even though we haven't played it as frequently in the past few years, it's always a great one to revisit. And I feel like now more than ever, after the sort of boom of a community that we've had within 8123, I feel like it's a really important song for people to hear and to feel a part of and to sing along to live. Can't wait to revisit this one for the fest, and yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Girls Do What They Want was the first song that I remember us writing that I can actually remember people singing back loudly. The first kind of single that we had that, for whatever reason, just kind of did something for us more than any song I'd done before that. And I remember, I think we wrote it in the back of a van at a show. Before we went on stage, I remember kind of toying around with the riff. We had the acoustic guitars back when we were touring in the van. We had like a bed in the back and maybe GarageBand set up. I don't really remember, but for us that was kind of or at least for me, that's a song that I can look back and really remember feeling that connection and feeling people's enthusiasm about it. So I'll always kind of have a fond memory of how that one came together.
I Must Be Dreaming. This song I remember writing. We were in my parents' house in the bedroom that we had there to practice in, and we wrote it with Justin from Brighton and Rock to the Moon. He was in town and we were writing songs, and he came in the room and helped us out a little bit. And then once we got in the studio, we changed it, and it's kind of the beat is a ripoff of a song by the Wallflowers. The Only Difference is that song. So if you listen to that right next to I Must Be Dreaming, you'll hear the obvious ripoff. But this one's one of my favorites to play live off of that album. We don't play it as often as I would like, but it's a good one. It's fun. I think this one probably has stood the test of time. One of the best to me as far as on the album goes, and doesn't feel dated in 2008. It feels like it could have been on any of our albums, which is hard to do. So very proud of this one. Excited to play it at the fest. Into Your Arms. This one I remember very clearly. John sending me the demo. He had written it. His parents had a iMac in their office room, and he recorded it on GarageBand in there. And he had just gotten off the phone with a guy. We were talking to record labels, a couple different record labels, and one of the guys from Fueled by Ramen had made a suggestion that he felt like a lot of our songs were kind of in the same tempo and were all upbeat and fun and whatever, and that we should try to write some that were a little different. And I think literally right after he got off the phone, he wrote Into Your Arms, and now we've been playing it for 10 years. Yeah, this one changed a lot in the studio, and and then over time kind of took on a life of its own. I think it definitely set the tone that we could do other things besides just upbeat, fun songs, and it kind of becoming one of our popular songs. Early on, I think really influenced Black and White, sounding a little more mellow. So, yeah, I think, I don't know, it's just crazy that a song that, John wrote in his parents' house, then has kind of become what it has, and lots of people have listened to it, and the video was on people's Blackberries when they got it, and the song really did a bunch for us early on. So just crazy thinking about the demo and thinking about where it began, and then everybody that heard it. I would say this is probably one of our songs that reached the most people as far as the older albums go. So we haven't played it in probably 3 years or so. So playing at the fest will be fun, and I think we're gonna probably try to keep it pretty true to how it is on the album, and we haven't done that in a while either. So I'm excited to hear you sing it, and yeah, Into Your Arms.
Time to Go was originally going to be the first song on Can't Stop. When we were writing it, we were like, "Oh, it's for sure the first one." And for the longest time, I think up until the record was done, in our heads, that was the first song on the record. Now thinking back, I'm glad it wasn't. But yeah, it's interesting when you're making an album and you've never done that before. What seems like a great idea, and at the time that was definitely one of them. And if I'm correct, I think we've only played that song on one tour. It was on the AP tour in '09. And we've maybe played it one other time since. At like a show, but I don't think so. I think we only played it on one tour. So that's all I can really think about that song. Yeah.
I'm taking all of my time. I'm dodging words, but she's saying
This Is the End. I remember that song being a very early on thing for us. When we were writing for Can't Stop, certain songs, I know Girls came in the back of a Suburban, and or Girls Do What They Want, and I think This Is the End really was kind of one of those songs where we wrote it on a trip. And I think that it being so early on for us, song structures were still a newer thing, and that song was just this kind of natural thing that happened. It was a round of vocal parts that we had worked on, I want to say in the SUV while driving like in Kansas or something, in the rain, because I remember just singing that part over and over again, and I think the early GarageBand demo had rain in the background of it, and the demo ended up being very close to what the final version was, and that song is a song that I still really enjoy playing, and I hope we get to play for a long time.
So whoever she is was, it kind of was an idea for an acoustic song that we had. We played around with instrumentation. I remember being in the studio doing that one, and for me that's a really fun one because we recorded it pretty bare bones, and over the years it's turned into something that we've done so many different versions of it, especially live. And I think it's one of those really important tracks on that first record on Can't Stop, just because it's a nice break from the norm on that album, and it's kind of a breather, and I think the lyric is really important, and it's simple. I like simple, and for me that's one of the more simple songs on that record. And yeah, it's just kind of cool when you record something bare the way that we did with that one, and then you take it into a live setting and you can add a bunch of really cool elements to it and keep it fresh throughout the years. I mean, we've still played that song fairly recently too, so even 10 years later it still makes it into the set every now and then.
Count on 1, 2, 3 was actually on our first EP ever, and we wrote it. Actually, Jared and Kenny weren't in the band yet, but it took some change. It had some changes, and but it was kind of one song that was from like the original batch of songs that we wrote when we first started. But Matt Squire at the time thought that we needed a song from an older song from when we started, and he picked that one. And I remember at first being like, that's strange. But I'm glad that it's on the album, and I don't know, it ties things from like the very start into things we ended up doing later. But it's funny because I remember when we wrote it at Pat's parents' house when most of us were still in high school, and I remember it in my mind. I was really excited because I was into this band called Copeland at the time, and to me it sounded like a Copeland song. So yeah, what else about that song? Yeah, it reminds me of when we started more than anything. Yeah, it's a good fast tune.
So Kiss and Sell was a really funny kind of writing experience. I remember we were in pre-production for the first record with Matt Squire, And we were short a couple songs, and I remember him saying, I'm gonna leave and run some errands, and when I get back I would like for you guys to have written a song in 3/4. So we left. We had never made a record before, so I just remember my first thought was kind of looking around and being like, what does he mean by 3/4? Time signature, obviously. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We had never done anything like that before, and just that idea in itself was kind of like overwhelming, and we knew we had a couple hours to figure something out before he came back. And I remember the riff kind of coming together, that like the intro lead, and thinking about it being more like up-tempo. But for us, that was totally new territory, and we didn't know, even when he got back, if we had done the right thing. Like, he said, write a song. What he said was, write a song in 3. That could have meant anything, but he got back and we played it for him, and then we ended up actually putting it on the record and, you know, kind of hashing it out and fully realizing the rest of the song. But yeah, definitely opened our eyes a lot on that record, and that was one of the ways that he did it, was to kind of push us to do things that we hadn't done before. And 3/4 was something we never experimented with, time signatures or anything like that. So that's kind of where Kiss and Sell came from.
Oh, you left me for broken heart.
You Left Me. I remember You Left Me was definitely a different direction for us at the time. Compared to the other songs on Can't Stop, I think it was more obviously electronic influenced, and we were listening to a lot of stuff at that time that was kind of in that ballpark. One that stands out, or a couple that stand out, would be like something like Imogen Heap, and then there was this artist named Stacey Clark that had this kind of, I think she was mostly acoustic based, at least at the time, and it was acoustic and electronic stuff, and so it was like very like cool chopped vocals and things like that. And I think some of that style we tried to emulate on You Left Me. It was, yeah, definitely an attempt to go a little bit different direction than the rest of the record and give a little bit more of an electronic feel.
Full circle. The album is complete. We are trying to create the last song on an album. I remember the exact moment, that I decided that We'll All Be would close the record, and I remember the moment I wrote it. I wrote it at my friend Max's house in his garage with a bunch of friends around, and we kept singing the lines that ended up closing the record. And I feel like that is what Can't Stop is all about in its entirety. It's about friendship, and it's about growing up, and it's about the sort of identity crisis that is adolescence and into adulthood. I feel like we knew that we wanted some anthemic way to close the first record, and I think that We'll All Be probably was one of the oldest songs that we had had from start to finish as far as the idea. I think it went Girls Do What They Want, We'll All Be, Into Your Arms, and a couple others that were like the first songs that we wrote when we were writing for Can't Stop. It's such a great way for us to end sets, and I feel like that was the goal, was to translate something from record to the live setting that would be anthemic and feel like it was a great final thought. It's still one of my favorite songs that we've ever done, and without that song, I don't think that we would have opened a lot of doors in the future. Black and White was obviously heavy on the twang and sort of that Americana sound, and I feel like if we hadn't done We'll All Be, we would have never explored that sound on Black and White and on Pioneer and so forth. So I think Pat had said it before, but We'll All Be might have been one of the most important songs for our band. looking back, just because of the opportunities that it allowed us for the future. Definitely one of my favorite songs from our band, period. And I think one of my favorite songs on the record, obviously. So that was it, track by track. Thank you very much for listening to us. Thank you very much for listening to this record. We can't wait to play it, and we love you. Peace.